What's going on, guys? Welcome back to United View. How's everybody? We've already got comments on the screen. Look at that. How is everybody doing? Yes, it's been this press conference. Usually the press conferences are at 1:30, and it was a bit of a delay getting there today, wasn't it? My oh my, what a delay it was. It was meant to be at 1:30, and then it wasn't at 1:30. Then it was going to be at 2 p.m. Then it was a delay from 2 p.m. Oh. Oh, it's one of those ones today, isn't it? But we are back. We're live. Be sure to smash a like on the video. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As you just saw right there, we can get your comments up on the screen. And I tell you what, I will give the journalists some credit here because usually I can be quite critical when we do these press conference reactions because some of the questions that get asked tend to be those sort of generic questions of how great is Cristiano Ronaldo and how important is XYZ or Paul Pogba, and it's rinse and repeat questions all the time. But in fairness to everyone that asked a question today in the press conference ahead of Manchester United's FA Cup third round match against Aston Villa on Monday, in fairness, pretty much every question I would say was spot on. There were some really good questions asked that had quite a lot of meat to it, to be honest with you. Had quite a lot of meat to it and had quite a lot of interesting responses from Ralf Rangnick. So we're going to get into all of them. As I mentioned, be sure to smash a like on the video. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. So let's get to the first one. And it was from Simon Stone. Oh, and by the way, yes, we can see in the chat there, Geordie Toon for Life says, good afternoon from a happy Toon supporter. Good afternoon. Yes, what a signing. Kieran Trippier is a Newcastle United player. Congratulations. Big signing for them. So let's get into the questions asked. The first was from Simon Stone, who said, of course, the Wolves game didn't turn out the way you would have wanted it to. Since then, there's been a lot of discussion and debate on the atmosphere around the club. What are your thoughts on where the club is, and how do you feel about the squad in general? So this is what Ralf Rangnick had to say, quote, I can only tell you about the squad, locker room, coaching staff. Everybody was very disappointed, not only about the result, but also performance. We have 4 days of training before Aston Villa. My job is to make sure we show a different performance. So again, it's pretty generic response there, and don't worry, the questions regarding the atmosphere and the feeling around the players at Manchester United at Old Trafford right now continued, because that was, I think, the thing that everyone was really most interested in. Speaking for myself personally, that was the thing I was most interested in going into this press conference. I wondered, are they going to ask him about these leaks? It's been a week of them. We've got more leaks than the Titanic at this point, and the question could be, have we even hit the iceberg yet? If we haven't, that's a concern. That's a massive concern. We've got more leaks than a pack of hedgehogs in a lilo. Not sure why they would be on a lilo and how the hedgehogs would get into that scenario in the first place, but that's how many leaks we've got. That's the analogy I'm going for. We've got so many leaks, it's been ridiculous this week. With players, reportedly being unhappy and not being thrilled with the training sessions, not being thrilled with the coaches, not being thrilled with the tactics, and all this kind of stuff, and confrontation brewing, and all of those stories. I hoped, and we did get it in this press conference, I hoped that people would ask Ralf Rangnick, what is going on? What is going on with these stories? What is going on with these these constant leaks and people being unhappy? And he did get asked about that. But when he was asked specifically about the Wolves game, he responded as you would expect. He's obviously frustrated, not just with the result, but we were crap. We were rubbish. And certainly, and this is what I said during the game and after the game, there's no way that Ralf Rangnick looks at how that Manchester United side played on Monday and goes, that's how I want my team to play. That's how I set them up to play. There's just no way. There's just no way. So he said what you would expect him to say there. We were disappointed. My job to make sure we play better. We've got 4 days of training. We'll move on. And pretty much that would be what I guess Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would say as well. It's what any manager would say. So the better questions continued. So following up from that, Simon Stone asked him, speaking of these leaks, I suppose, are the players behind you and the new coaches, of course, lots of coaches have left, lots of new coaches have come in, and are the players listening and buying in to your tactics and your tactical philosophy? Which, again, great question. That is a real good question. That's a question that's got meat on the bone. That's a question that is related to all of these leaks and stories that have been out, and this is what Rangnick had to say. Quote, they are at least trying. I'm sure they're at least listening. we concede less goals than before, an average of 1.7 per game that we have conceded so far, 0.6 in those 6 games. Yes, still it's about balance. I think we showed that in the last games, that they're trying to follow the advice we give. We conceded less goals than before, but it's about balance between offense and defense. Now, when I saw that, because when the question was asked, I thought, great, that is a good question to ask. And I don't know how I feel about the response. Not that I'm angry or annoyed with RANGNICK necessarily, or RANGNICK, as I've seen people say. You're pronouncing it wrong, RANGNICK. I'm not necessarily frustrated with him, but when he said they're at least trying, I'm sure they're at least listening, I saw that, I went, that's the bare minimum. Is it not? Is it not? Is that not the bare minimum for anyone? They're at least listening. And it depends how you want to read into that, I suppose, isn't it? Because if they're saying, if Ralph Rangnick's saying, look, yeah, the performances aren't there, and the performance has been terrible, but they're trying and they're at least listening, that's the bare minimum. But is that like not Ralph Rangnick saying they're trying, but they're just not good enough, some of them? You know, we're trying to educate them, we're trying to get across this new tactical philosophy, but ultimately, some of these guys, they're trying, but they're just not good enough. And the idea that the Manchester United manager has to confirm to the press, the media, the fans, that the players are trying in training speaks volumes to where the club is right now. As fans, we're not even sure if the players are trying, because the performances on the pitch certainly don't reflect that. So for the managers to have to come out and go, and they are trying, well, if they're not trying, I'm sure they're listening. Whether they actually decide to apply it in training, whether they decide to apply it on the pitch is another thing, but I'm sure they're listening to me. They might be listening and then saying, I don't know what this guy thinks he's talking about, or these coaches are rubbish, and this, that, and the other, but I'm sure they're listening. That is, it's less than the bare minimum, isn't it? Really, it's less. You can't even not really do that. It's difficult to not listen. People can not listen, but it's quite difficult to actively try to not listen to people. So when he said that, and he said, well, they're trying, I'm sure they're at least listening, I sort of went, really? Really? Because the response I would be at least slightly encouraged by would be, yep, they're taking everything on board. The training sessions are great, and it's going to take time. It is a bit of a process, but I have a great relationship with them. They're doing this, that, and the other. But the response of, well, I'm sure they're at least listening, that's a concern. That is a concern for me. Now, he said before about that obviously his training methods and his tactical philosophy and his tactics is bearing some fruit, I guess, because he started talking about we've conceded less goals so far, which is true. We have conceded less goals so far, as he mentioned, 0.6 in these 6 games, and we've been conceded, have we had a game where we conceded more than 2 goals under Ralph Rangnick? No, I don't think we have. It's always been the 1 goal. So he'll be happy about that, but it's almost like at what expense? Because the expense of, conceding no goals or 1 goal in a game is that we've got like nothing offensively, nothing. And the expense of conceding less goals is that because we're keeping more clean sheets, we now can't pass the ball, or because we're keeping more clean sheet, the players can't be bothered to run or press. So I think when Ralph's talking about that, he's probably just trying to look at sort of small victories. When you're in sort of a job review and you're not doing a great job, but there's one thing you can kind of latch on to, he's probably saying that. He's just latching on to, well, conceding less goals, maybe. So that's about it. That's what I can hold on to there. But the interesting thing was that last quote there when he said, I think we showed in the last games that they're trying to follow the advice we give. We conceded less goals than before, but it's about balance between offense and defense. To be honest with you there, Ralph, because I'm talking straight to Ralph, obviously. To be honest, I would question that. Yes, we have conceded less goals than before. That is true. Yes, it's about trying to find that balance between offense and defense. But I'm not sure if, certainly in the last couple of games, maybe that first game against Crystal Palace, that first 30 minutes. But apart from that, I'm not sure in any of the games, apart from the Palace game, we've seen that the Manchester United players are trying to follow the advice that's being given by Ralph Rangnick and his coaching staff. I'm to be honest, just look at the performances, watching back. When have we seen the press? We haven't seen a press. We saw a press for 30 minutes against Crystal Palace, but there have been, 5 games since then? We've seen no press. We have seen, I guess you could say, technically control if you want to look at possession stats, but sometimes they can be almost misquoted, or they can be sort of arranged differently to make you think different. Were we ever in control of the game against Wolves? No, we weren't. We had more of the ball. Doesn't necessarily mean we were in control of the game. That's the thing with stats. They can be manipulated into whatever narrative you want to tell. I don't think we were ever in control of that Wolves game. Maybe, if you want to be generous, for a maybe 10-15 minute period when we did actually perk up for a little bit, but we were never in control. Never in control. So looking at those performances, I don't think the Manchester United players are trying to follow the advice that we're given. He mentioned it later on when he said that actually we probably relapsed into bad habits that we've had before. And that's very accurate. So I struggle to buy in or believe that these players are necessarily truly buying in. I think he mentioned he was true in his first answer when he said, well, I think they're listening. That's about it. I think they're listening. So whether or not they're actually applying themselves, well, they're not applying themselves. Look at the performances. Look at the pitch. They're not applying themselves. I'm sure they are listening, but they're also listening and moaning. They're listening and moaning and complaining. Those stories don't just come from nowhere. Are all of them true? Of course they're not. And you can't believe everything you read. And in even the stories where there is elements of truth in there, it's just that. It's elements of truth. The first half of the story might be true, but the second half might not be true. But they don't just come from nowhere. They don't just come from nowhere. And it's like panning for gold. You have to sort of sift through the bullshit and then find the gold, which is the actual truth in the middle of it. So I'm sure they are listening. Whether or not they're actually trying or not, I think that's a bigger debate to be discussed later on. Clarkey says, in Ollie's last 5 games, we conceded about 20 goals. That's true. That is true. And as I mentioned, that is, I guess, the one improvement that we've seen under RANGNICK so far. And it's something that he is hanging on to. And I'm almost hesitant to say we're defending better because we're still conceding a lot of chances. I think there's a difference between clean sheets and conceding lots of chances. David De Gea has still been arguably our best player because he's making so many saves. A great defence doesn't concede that many chances. As a goalkeeper, you don't really want... If you're not busy, your defence is doing its job properly. At the moment, David De Gea is very busy because the defence isn't doing the job properly. That's just the fundamentals. But we're conceding less goals, so that's, I guess, small victory for Ralf Rangnick. But again, whether or not their players are truly buying into what he's saying, I don't know. Well, I disagree because, again, if you look at the performances, we're just not seeing that. We're not seeing that. Next question was from Simon Peach, who said, who asked Rangnick rather, how has the group reacted to the loss? How much can a result be amplified at the biggest club in the world? Is this an example of how it's one performance and, the sky's falling kind of situation? Rangnick said that all the players were disappointed, especially in the first half against Wolves. We didn't get hold of the ball. Second half, it was a bit better. But again, it's a question of balance, offense and defense. He mentioned that in offense, we have a lot of quality, but it's a case of, again, having that right balance. This was an interesting question, though. The follow-up question from Simon Peach was very interesting. He said there's been lots of talk about the midfield and thoughts on, and he asked Rangnick, what are your thoughts on the options you have at your disposal? Is there a profile of player that's missing? Is that something you're going to look at in this January transfer window? Is the midfield position something that you're looking at? And Rangnick said, quote, it doesn't help if there is a profile missing. We need to work with the players we have. We have shown we are able to keep clean sheets with these players, but it's what we're doing with and without the ball. We have had too many turnovers in that game, the game against Wolves. We shouldn't make it too easy for the other teams when we have the ball. It's about responsible decision-making at the right moment. So he was a bit non-committal, I guess, when it comes to, is he going to bring players in? Is he going to be looking for a profile of a midfielder? Is there a certain type of midfielder he's looking for? As he mentioned, it doesn't help if there's a profile missing. We've heard those reports that the midfielder is the prime target. It was the prime target prior to Rangnick. It certainly is now. Whether or not we would do that in January, I don't know. Obviously, he's right. We need to work with the players we have. And as he mentioned later on, we've got a lot of them. We do have a lot of them. He mentioned once again, he goes back to the clean sheets. We kept clean sheets with these players. But he is right in the sense that it is what we're doing with and without the ball, because the answer is we're doing nothing with and without the ball. Certainly without the ball, again, we saw the press against Crystal Palace for 30 minutes. Since then, we might as well be putting up wanted posters, missing posters. Press. Where is the press? It might be on a carton of milk. Do they even still do that? Be on a carton of milk, would it be like missing Manchester United's press? We have yet to see it since that Crystal Palace game. We had a 30-minute manager bounce. Since then, we haven't seen the press, and so he's right. It is what we're doing without the ball, because we're not doing anything without the ball, and what we're doing with it. My goodness, against Wolves and against Newcastle and against Norwich, the passing, just like simple fundamentals, basics of football, just basics of professional football. Not just even professional, amateur football. Basics of football when you're playing on a Sunday or a Saturday in your local league. Pass the ball 5 yards, pass it to feet. Have a decent first touch. Don't kick it out for a throw-in. Don't give the ball away. So I think that's what he's trying to say there. Obviously, we could probably do with an extra midfield player, and this is kind of my point in that if we got Haidara, Tchouameni's been linked to us once again today. If we got any of those players, Ruben Neves, and dropped them into this side, great. They have qualities. I'm sure they would improve the side depending on the system that we're playing. But you still have all of the players we have right now, and they still need to be able to pass the ball 5 yards. They still need to be able to not be constantly giving the ball away. They still need to be able to not be kicking out for touch every 5 seconds. Or every time we do win the ball back, we just give it away, so we're constantly under pressure. And we're not actually building anything. That's why we've had hardly any chances. We can't hold on to the ball for 5 minutes. So I think his point is there that yes, if a profile of player is missing, that would imply that we do need to sign someone. But also, some of these players just need to raise their standards, because the standards are so low at the moment at Manchester United. And yes, they have dropped off over the years, but these are still professional footballers. Granted, they might not be good enough for Manchester United. Granted, they might not have the technical ability that is required to play in this system. Granted, all of that stuff, but they are still professional footballers. They can still pass the ball 5 yards. They can still pass it to feet. They can still not underhit or overhit every pass they do. And they need to up their standards. And as RANGNICK is saying, we still need to work with the players that we've got, because they're not performing to not even their peak or their best level. They're not even performing in general. They're not even performing in general. So we do have to work with that. And he was right. There were way too many turnovers in that last game. I mean, in the game against Newcastle, it was the highest amount of times we've given the ball away this season, because the quality has just been that poor. And again, maybe it's because some of these players technically aren't good enough. Maybe it's because this new system expects too much from players that just can't handle it or aren't good enough. But I disagree. At the end of the day, you still are professional footballers. If it's come to the point where professional footballers no longer can pass the ball 5 yards, they don't deserve not only to be at Manchester United, they don't deserve to be playing football in general. That is the basics. That is just the fundamental basics. And the players need to work on that. They really do. The next question, Clarkey says, agree fully, the passing has been beyond awful this season. The players have paid so much money and can't even pass the bloody ball. Yash says, bench Ronaldo and we are ahead against Chelsea too. Norm says, the amount of guilt I would feel if I was a player to not score or up my game after De Gea made save after save after save would be through the roof. Maureen says, no player will fix our problems. They're contagious. And that's kind of my point. That is kind of my point here in that, and I think it's kind of RANGNICK's point as well, in what he's saying when he's like, yeah, great, we would love to get a midfielder, I suppose, and have the right profile of midfielder. But is that going to fix, every single issue? No, it's not. It's not. It's a bigger thing. It's a bigger issue at the moment. It's a mentality issue. It's an application issue. The next question was from Alan Myers. This was a really good question. Arguably the best question of the press conference itself. He said, there's lots of talk at the moment about the Manchester United dressing room being unsettled. Is there a problem at Manchester United regardless of who the coach is? And does that need to be addressed first before United can have success? Great question. Alan Myers, that's a clap. Because that's a great question, because that's a question that people have really started to ask over the last few days, hasn't it? Like, this isn't a Ralph Rangnick thing. This isn't an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer thing. This isn't a Jose Mourinho thing. This isn't a Louis van Gaal thing. It's not even a David Moyes thing. For about a decade, there is a problem when it comes to the dressing room of Manchester United. There is a problem when it comes to the attitude and application of the players. Jose Mourinho, look, he's the pantomime villain, and he was vilified at Manchester United for calling out some of these players and saying openly in the media that there wasn't a togetherness, there was an attitude problem at the club, etc., etc. And he was vilified for that. Ralf Rangnick's come in and he's just basically come to the same conclusion. He's come to the same thing. The dressing room is toxic. There are players that are out for themselves. There is no togetherness. And, there is an issue when it comes to application and real grit, I suppose, on the pitch. And as Alan mentions in this question, you have to fix that, irrespective of the coach. No coach can be successful, maybe. No coach can be successful at Manchester United whilst this is a problem. Does that need to be addressed first? So, Alan Mahrez, credit for a great question. This is what Rangnick said, quotes, those players, and he's referring to players who get little game time, are unhappy about the situation. It's obvious, clear. I tend to explain to players every 2 or 3 weeks why they are not playing, and that is an issue in our team and other clubs. So essentially what he was saying is that this issue of having players in the dressing room that were unsettled or unhappy wasn't necessarily just an issue for Manchester United. He was saying we have a big squad. In recent weeks, apart from the centre-back issue we had for the last game, but in recent weeks, we've had most of the players available, apart from Paul Pogba. That means with that many players available, of course, only 11 can play. So, of course, with this giant squad that we have, you've got a lot of players, 12, 13 or more, that don't play or are not even in the squad or don't even come on if they're on the bench. Of course, those players aren't happy about the situation that they're in. As he said, he tries to explain to players every couple of weeks while they're not playing. He can't do it every week, but that's not just an issue at our club, but it's an issue at so many clubs. Now, I agree partially with what he's saying there. I agree that possibly part of this issue that we have when it comes to this, 17 players unhappy, whatever the numbers were that were quoted this week, is possibly due just to having a giant squad and not everyone can play. I get that. Maybe it is the sins of the past catching up to us, but also Manchester United have to hold themselves accountable with that. We're ultimately the one that decided to keep all of these players. We're the ones that decided to hand out these contracts. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the beginning of the season was promising everyone, last season I didn't play you, but we are going to have more rotation this year, and it hasn't happened. So I can understand both sides of the argument. I can. I'm not a monster in this. I can understand from the player's perspective of I've been lied to and I was led down, the wrong path, and they said I was going to play and I didn't. But also I sympathise with them to the point because I say, for instance, Jesse Lingard. Jesse Lingard, right? He played great with West Ham last season. Why do you believe what people are telling you? Why? Why do you believe Ole Gunnar Solskjaer going, we're going to play you this season? Because wouldn't it be in the back of your head going, he said that before and I didn't. What's changed? Nothing's changed. More people have come in. Eric Bailly, it was the same. I was on a stream when Eric Bailly signed the contract at Manchester United, and everyone, to a person, went, why? Why? I like Eric Bailly. He's a great defender. Arguably, he's one of the better defenders we have at the club. But he wasn't playing. So then if you're not playing, to sign a new deal and then to continue complaining, I'm not playing, well, what's changed? What's changed there? Nothing has. So, and it's about, and again, it's to take your career in your own destiny, take control of your own destiny. If you're not happy about it, then leave. As I mentioned before, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And also as well, where's your pride? Where's your self-respect? If people are unhappy at jobs all the time. They are. And sometimes it's not easy to leave, and sometimes you can't leave in the real world. And this is not even really professional football, because let's be honest, every single person that wants to leave Manchester United right now could get a club. Easy, could get a club. In the real world, a lot of people aren't happy in their jobs, but they still have to do it. And even if they don't like the manager they're working for, or the methods, I guess the tactics in what you would have in your everyday life, you go, look, my boss is an idiot, my boss is dumb, or I don't like this person, I don't like my line manager, whatever, but I've got enough self-respect that I'm still going to do the best I can do. I'm still going to put in the work that I have to do because I want to go to bed at night. I want to sleep easy knowing that I've given everything I can. I've earned what I'm getting paid, and I'm good at what I do. And it doesn't matter if I've got a terrible boss or a terrible manager or the people way above me that own this company are idiots. I'm going to do the best job that I can do because I've got pride in what I do. I've got self-respect in what I do, and I'm going to earn every single penny that I'm paid. And it's not like that with some of these players. And that's the frustrating thing, I think, for a lot of fans. Take some pride. Have some self-respect. If you don't like the manager, if you don't like the tactics, if you don't like the overall situation at the club and you feel like you've been lied to, still continue to work your ass off. And when it comes to situations like January or the summer or when your contract expires, leave. And maybe I am oversimplifying a situation that's a bit more complex. I don't know. But that's the frustrating thing for me with all of this. You know, again, where's your self-respect? Where's your self-respect? People would kill to be in your position. They would absolutely kill to be in your position. But I agree with what Alan Mahrez was saying. You know, that's why I think it was a great question when he said, look, this has been a constant issue for Manchester United for a decade. And it's a player issue, and I'm not sure if any Manchester United manager can be truly successful, and by successful I mean winning the Premier League, winning the Champions League, until this issue of attitude and mentality is sorted out at Manchester United. Because we always get to a point where it looks like we might be getting close to success, but then we drop off massively. Because again, the attitude and the mentality just isn't there. The next question was from Michael Gray, and this was actually a good one as well. He said, with the players not knowing your future, Ralph, is that also having an effect on performances? And RANGNICK said, quote, we have players with contracts expiring in the summer. We also have one or two more people who want to leave and are under contract. It's about the players dealing with that in a professional way, showing up to training, getting a chance to play. If this is not the case, the player, club and agents need to discuss the situation. I cannot say to anyone else. I will address that with the players directly. And to be honest, that's a great answer. That is a great answer because it's pretty much exactly what I was just saying. Yeah, we do have... and he kind of dodges the question. He doesn't really answer it. He's very clever there. It's a very sort of politician answer of, when it comes to your future, is the fact that you're an interim manager and they know that you're probably not going to be the manager at the end of the season. Does that affect anything? And he just pivoted. But he pivoted very well in the sense that these people that have contracts expiring and they've got uncertain futures. But as I mentioned, you have to remain professional. You remain professional, you do your best, you show up at training, you give everything in training, you listen and apply yourself to what the coaches and your managers are asking you to do, and you deal about it in a professional manner. And you work hard in training, you don't complain, and then if it doesn't work out, you have the conversation directly with the manager and the club, I want to leave. You don't then start, talking to journalists or leaking things out in the media and doing all that kind of stuff. But, going to the question, I'm sure it does have some kind of effect. I'm sure it does. Those stories have been coming out over the last 24 hours or so that Ralf Rangnick is very aware of this, that he's only got so much authority over these players, and it's difficult for players to buy into what he's telling them to do, knowing that in 5 months' time he's not going to be the manager. And I think it's fairly obvious at this point that at the end of the season, Ralf Rangnick is not going to stay on as Manchester United manager. He is going to move into that consultancy role, whatever that is. We are going to be looking for the new manager, whether that's Ten Hag, Pochettino, or whoever. And I think these players are already looking towards May as well. They're already going, well, I might, I'll try and do a bit of a press, but why bother? And it's this defeatist attitude again. And this is why it goes back to attitude. It's this defeatist attitude that's why we're in the position that we're in. Because it's just like, oh, I don't like him, so I'm just not going to listen to him. He's only here for 5 months. I'll get over it. That's the frustrating thing for me. Red or Dead says it's bad when Arsenal fans are giving us advice. I tell you what as well, like I said before that I wasn't worried about Arsenal because I think they'll fall off, and I still don't think they'll get top 4, but they're playing miles better than us. They are, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. It's true. Ed T says, I pray that Ralph and whoever takes over rips this team apart over the next 1 or 2 years. Try to keep De Gea, Eddie and Cavani as dressing room leaders while building a side around Mace, Sanch, Bruno and Varane. Well, I mentioned before over the course of the last few days that I think the Manchester United that begins next season and this Manchester United now is going to be completely different. I really do. I think there's going to be a massive difference between the Manchester United that starts next season and this Man United. And I think there'll be big names that leave. There'll be big names that leave. And And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I know people hate the term, rebuild, another rebuild, but there needs to be. There needs to be because this, as I mentioned, the dressing room's toxic. It really is. The next question. This is an interesting one from DJ Gnu. Says, important question. Did the board give Rangnick full control or not? If not, why even bother to get a manager of this quality with less or little control? I think they probably did give him as much control as he has, as any manager has, whether he's interim or not. I think it's just having that part of your title, the interim title. Again, these players, it's like having a substitute teacher at school. You don't really listen to them that much. They'll run the sessions and they'll run the class and you do the work that they're doing, but not really to build that much of a rapport or relationship or listen to them that much because they're not going to be there tomorrow when the regular teacher's back off their holiday or they're back off being sick or whatever. It's that kind of situation. Now, it's slightly different with Ralf Rangnick because he is going to be around after the end of the season, just in a different capacity, in a consultant capacity. Now, we don't know if he's going to end up, taking trips to the training pitch or if he's going to be completely in the offices of Old Trafford or Carrington. We just don't know. I don't think even he knows. No one really knows anything about that consultancy role. It's not really been fleshed out that much. So I think he does have authority and I think he does have control. I think he probably has more control than your average interim manager would because he's going to be sticking around. But I think it's a case, again, of player mentality. These players just they look at him as a substitute teacher. There'll be a new guy in a few months, so why bother? And again, that's a massive mentality problem. It really is. Manish says, Owen, did you watch the Mahrez rant post-presser? I didn't, because I was setting up this, but I have seen a lot of people talking about it. What did he say? I would love to know what he said. Was he going in on the players? I did see a lot of people talking about it. Fair play if he did. Sometimes it's difficult with MUTV because, of course, it's club-generated content. But sometimes, it's a situation. Ed says, how many times did we all dick about when a sub-teacher came in? Didn't matter whether they were friendly or strict. We didn't care. These players are just children acting up. I think it is a similar situation to that, And I think if you look at it like the substitute teacher analogy, then you realise, because everyone did that. Everyone did it. It's a lesson off when the substitute teacher comes in because you're like, it just doesn't matter. Next question was from Andy Mitten. And these were the last couple of questions. Again, it was a relatively short press conference today. Andy Mitten said, do you feel that you and your coaches are making progress? And how important is the FA Cup this season? This is what Rangnick had to say, quote, and as David Lee says, be sure to smash a like on the video and subscribe. Rangnick said, quote, yes, we have made some progress, but obviously versus Wolves was a step back, a relapse to habits we have shown in the past. We need to insist that we need to work together. We can only get better in possession of the ball together. We have to do these things together with passion, emotion, and intensity. This was the problem against Wolves. We were only escorting them. Now, obviously, when he said passion, emotion, and intensity, I was like, be careful. It's a very Ollie quote, that. But it is true. And again, it goes back to my an original point there. Is that, and he mentioned it earlier when these questions about, the dressing room mentality and rumours, these leaks coming out of the dressing room of people being unhappy. And it was in one of the reports that came out, I forget who it was. It might have been James Ducker from The Telegraph. Or it might be from the Mail. Either one was that Ralf Rangnick essentially had come to the same conclusion that Jose Mourinho had, that this was a dressing room that didn't care about the collective as much as more cared about the individual. It was a very individualistic dressing room in that they only cared about themselves and not the team. And he's kind of, when you listen to these press conferences, you do have to kind of sort of, when managers talk, sometimes they are saying something else. And this is what I saw as sort of a rallying cry to the players of, you need to be together. We need to be together. And just fundamentally, if you think about it from a pressing point of view, how can you initiate a press if you're not working as a team? And that's the problem. When we've seen these performances recently, does this look like sides that are working as teams? Of course it doesn't. This doesn't look like sides that are working as teams at all. As a team at all. Again, it's all about the individual. It's all about the individual. And I guess maybe that comes from being a team that's just been based on individual moments. It's all about individual moments FC for the last 18 months, 2 years. It's all about individual brilliance. Now when you have to actually work as a team, they can't do it because it's a dressing room of individuals and not a team. And I think maybe that's Rangnick's biggest task here, is that in 5 months, can I somehow try my very best? Can I try my very best to somehow try and turn this group of individuals into a team? And maybe it's going to take way more than 5 months to do that. And I think it's a big job for whoever comes in, whether that's Ten Hag, whether that's Pochettino, whether that's whoever. So he didn't really ask the question about the FA Cup, so I suppose I can answer that one. The FA Cup is really important this season because it's our only chance of winning the trophy. I was still in the Champions League, obviously, but I mean, if we won that, my goodness, what a shocker that would be. What a surprise that would be. This is probably our best chance of winning a trophy this season. I don't know if it will take full priority as maybe it should, because the Champions League is going to be so vital to what we want to do next season in terms of this rebuild that's coming. You know, I think it was a report came out today about United's interest in Erling Haaland, and basically the concern is, one, is he even interested in Manchester United? And two, he definitely won't be interested in Manchester United if we're not in the Champions League. And that'll be a case for a lot of players. Yes, we're still Manchester United. Yes, it's still a big attraction to come, but you know, those big elite players that maybe can turn it around at United just aren't going to come if we're not in the Champions League next season. So I think the biggest priority for Ralf Rangnick, and certainly this will be coming from the board, I think as well, will be get in the top four. Get in the top four. If we can win an FA Cup, that'll be a bonus. Obviously, we would love it because we haven't won anything since 2017, since Mourinho's time with the Europa League and the Carabao Cup, etc. So, of course, we would love a trophy, and it should take some priority because of that. But ultimately, the biggest thing for Ralf Rangnick and the board and Manchester United in general will be trying to get that fourth position. The problem is, of all the teams competing for that fourth position right now, whether it's Tottenham, Arsenal, West Ham still involved in that conversation, and us, we just look miles off it. We look way off it. And that's not to say we can't turn things around, because there's still plenty of time, but like Rangnick and these reports were saying, and I mentioned in the transfer view this morning, he realizes he's running out of time. He doesn't have enough time to implement and make the changes that he wants to. The players realize that he doesn't have enough time. The players are treating him like a substitute teacher, so they're just listening to what he's saying as opposed to really applying what he's saying. And it's a divided dressing room anyway. It's a massively divided dressing room anyway, and it's an individualistic culture at Manchester United, and that it's only about the individual, not about the team, and that's the problem. But what do you think? What do you think about the FA Cup? Is that a priority for us this season, or do you think it's just focused on the league? And of course, what do you think about the predictions? There is going to be a preview, by the way. This isn't the preview for the game. A preview is going to be coming for the game on Monday. It's a Monday night fixture, which but less said about that, the better. Ed T says, to the board, the top priorities are 1, top 4, 2, Champions League progression, and 3, FA Cup. I would tend to agree. And that simply, Ed, comes down to money. Let's be honest here. The FA Cup will generate the least amount of money for Manchester United. The top 4 will generate the most. I mean, actually, Champions League would probably generate... No, the top 4 would generate the most because, again, prize money, Champions League, all that kind of stuff for next year. So top 4 would be the priority. Champions League progression will be obviously key for them because it's, obviously just in terms of awareness, prize money, all that kind of stuff, and just image, I suppose, as well. That will be huge for them. And an FA Cup, it's a trophy that is the most winnable, but in terms of prize money and all that kind of stuff and awareness, it's not that much, and the board won't necessarily care that much about it. That's just the situation, isn't it? Austin Baker says, it's a focus that we know won't lead to nowhere other than top 4. Sartak says, the priority should be to get most of the players out. Craig says, Monday Night Football, we don't play well. Is that a thing? Is our record on Monday nights not great? Well, it wasn't this past Monday. That's true. That's very true, Craig. Maureen says, Trent saying he'd rather retire than play for United. We're not serious anymore. It's probably, in fairness, Maureen, that's probably because he's a Liverpool player. I'm sure lots of players, vice versa, would, I'm sure Marcus Rashford would rather retire than play for Liverpool because he's a Manc, so I don't think that's anything to do really necessarily with stature. Brian says, for all of the players demanding that Donny van de Beek gets his chance is giving him a sense of entitlement. We don't see him at training, the coaches do. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily giving him a sense of entitlement. I agree with you that we don't see him in training, and we say this about other players, don't we, that aren't necessarily at that are at other clubs. If multiple coaches are coming to the same conclusion, maybe it does say something, I suppose. But we'll see. It'll be an interesting one if he does play on Monday, because I think Rangnick rather will go with. I'm trying my best to get that name pronunciation right. I have some people saying that I'm pronouncing it wrong, so I'm doing my very best. I think he'll go with a strong side on Monday because when's the next game? Saturday? So we've got plenty of time. So I think we'll go with a strong side. And I think Rangnick will be aware that if we can maybe get a bit of a cup run going and we can go to the latter stages, there will be maybe a bit of momentum. And let's be honest here, we just can't afford another loss, even if it's in the FA Cup. Can you imagine? I mean, it's already very toxic and it's already very negative when it comes to the players. It will get 10 times worse if we go out in the FA Cup in the third round at home. Granted, I understand it's against Aston Villa. Maybe we'll be playing Philippe Coutinho, who's joined Aston Villa on loan and all this kind of stuff. And Villa are in a bit of a good moment right now. But if we lose at home to Villa for the second time this season, by the way, the toxicity will just increase. And I think Rangnick's aware of that. You just can't afford more losses, even if it's not even in the league. Just from a morale, I guess, point of view as well. It would be terrible. And the pressure then that goes into the next game against Aston Villa, away at Villa Park this time, would be even higher. So we have to win. We have to win. Not just necessarily because we want to continue to progress through the competition, but also just a case of just to keep morale up at this point. So yeah, let me know your predictions. But let me know your predictions, and we'll do some predictions, and then we'll wrap it up here. As I mentioned, it was a short press conference, so there wasn't a ton of quotes to get into. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, in fairness to the media and the journalists, some press conferences we have are just completely, full of non-questions. But this one was a good press conference. I did appreciate it. Red or Dead says player power is the problem and has been for years, not just at United. Maybe you're right, Red or Dead. Maybe it's a wider football issue. We're just not as good at managing it, because I'm sure player power is a thing at Liverpool and Chelsea. It was previously at Chelsea, but Tuchel's managed it well. Pep and Klopp manage it very well as well. Maybe it's difficult for an interim manager to deal with player power. Yash says 2-1. Salah says 2-1. David Lee says 3-1 United win. Austin says 3-2. Cool says 2-1 United. Govan says 2-1 United maybe. So there's a lot of people a bit confident going into this one, which is good. A bit of positivity coming into this one. It would be good to knock Gerrard out the cup as well with Philippe Coutinho, but it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough game, no doubt about it. I think we'll go through just because, man, if we don't, that's my only feeling, is that if we don't, the toxicity is just going to increase and get bigger and bigger and bigger. My concern is just performances. It's just performances. I think Villa are far more clinical than, say, a Wolves. Let's be honest, if Wolves could finish, they would have been 2 or 3-0 up. Same with Newcastle, same with Norwich in those games. If they were clinical, same with Burnley. All of the teams that we played recently, if they were clinical, we'd have been 3 or 4-0 down at periods in those games. Seriously. Against Burnley, it would have been like 3-3, 4-4, whatever it may be. I think Villa are more clinical. I think they do have more quality, and I think we'll have to be aware of that. So it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be an interesting one. David Lee says, are you doing the match day live, Owen? I don't think so. I think KG is going to be back on the match view. I don't know. I'm just sort of making that up. We will have one. We will have one. I think KG will be back on the match view on Monday, but it depends, schedules and all that kind of stuff. But I think so. Either way, we'll have a full view afterwards, and we'll have the normal match day experience. We'll have the road trip, match view, full view after the game. We'll have all of the fan views as well. So it's going to be a totally normal match day experience as well. Also, I want to give a shout out to Flex today as well. I don't know if you've seen him. If you've tuned into Sky Sports News at any period today, you would have seen Flex on Sky Sports News. He was on the transfer shows, Good Morning Transfers and Transfer Talk. Did an amazing job. So be sure to show your love for Flex in the comments or in the live chat. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right corner and let him know on social media what a great job he did as well. Tremendous job. Awesome job. Representing United View, talking about all things football and transfers. It's an inspiration. It's an inspiration to all of us. So shout out to Flex. But look, guys, we'll wrap things up there. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great Friday as well. We'll be back tomorrow. I think Flex is going to be on tomorrow, I think. And I think Sunday we might have a full view as well. a proper full view. First time we've had one for a while, and there's plenty to talk about as well. And as I mentioned, Monday we'll have the full match day experience as well. So plenty of content coming. So be sure to subscribe and be sure to keep your eyes peeled because there's always something going on in the world of Manchester United. Anyway, guys, I'm out of here. Have a great Friday.